I should have known Marcus would try to sabotage my promotion. For 28 years, my older brother had perfected the art of undermining my achievements while positioning himself as the concerned sibling, just looking out for me. But this time his interference would cost him everything. Growing up as the younger sister in a family that worshipped Marcus's every accomplishment, I'd learned to keep my successes small and quiet. When I made honor roll, Marcus would remind everyone that grades didn't matter as much as real-world experience. When I got into a good college, he'd point out that book smarts weren't the same as street smarts. When I landed my first job at Morrison & Associates Marketing, he'd warned the family that corporate environments were toxic, and I was too sensitive to handle office politics. The pattern was always the same. Marcus positioned himself as the successful, practical older brother, while casting me as the emotional, naive little sister who needed protection from her own ambitions. Our parents bought into this narrative completely, constantly asking Marcus to keep an eye on my career choices and offering him opportunities to advise me on professional decisions. What they didn't see was how systematically Marcus undermined my confidence behind the scenes. Every promotion opportunity came with his warnings about office politics. Every professional achievement was met with concerns about whether I was getting too big for my britches. Every workplace challenge became evidence that I wasn't cut out for corporate success. During my first year at Morrison & Associates, I'd started documenting our conversations about my career. Not because I planned to use the evidence, but because I was beginning to question my own perceptions. Was I really as emotional and unprofessional as Marcus suggested, or was something else happening here? The documentation revealed a disturbing pattern. Every time I mentioned a success at work, Marcus would find reasons to diminish it. When I told him about leading a successful client presentation, he worried that I was showing off and might alienate my colleagues. When I shared that my supervisor had praised my strategic thinking, he cautioned that praise could be superficial, and I shouldn't get overconfident. My supervisor at Morrison & Associates, Jennifer Park, had been encouraging my career development since my second year. She'd watched me successfully manage increasingly complex client accounts, lead cross-departmental projects, and consistently exceed my performance targets. When the Director of Strategic Planning position opened up, she strongly encouraged me to apply. "Rachel, you have the strongest combination of analytical skills and client relationship management I've seen in my 10 years here," Jennifer said during our quarterly review. "Your campaign for the Henderson Tech account increased their ROI by 340%, and 3 clients have specifically requested to work with you again. You're ready for this promotion." I felt excited about the opportunity, but Marcus's voice was already in my head, questioning whether I was overreaching, whether the promotion would be too much stress, whether I was setting myself up for failure. Still, I decided to apply, carefully preparing my portfolio and presentation for the interview process. The application process went smoothly. I'd built strong relationships across departments, my performance metrics were consistently high, and my client testimonials were glowing. The interview panel seemed impressed with my strategic vision for the department and my plans for expanding client services. That's when Marcus offered to help with networking support for my promotion. He'd recently started working at a consulting firm that occasionally partnered with Morrison & Associates, and he suggested he might be able to put in a good word for me with people he'd met from my company. I should have recognized this as a red flag, but I was nervous about the promotion and grateful for any support. The first sign something was wrong came 2 weeks after my final interview. Jennifer called me into her office with a confused expression. She'd received a call from HR asking about my emotional stability, and whether she had concerns about my ability to handle the increased responsibilities of the director role. They said they'd received a call from someone claiming to be your brother, expressing concerns about your stress management and whether this promotion might be too much pressure for you, Jennifer explained. I told them that was completely contrary to everything I've observed. You're one of the most level-headed, professional people on my team. Have you been having any concerns about the promotion that you haven't mentioned? My stomach dropped. I knew immediately what had happened, but I needed to understand the full scope. That afternoon, I called HR directly and spoke with Maria Santos, our HR director. We received a call from someone identifying himself as Marcus Chin, your brother, Maria explained. He said he works in consulting and has experience with similar corporate environments. He expressed concerns that you might be in over your head with this promotion, that you tend to get overwhelmed under pressure, and that the family was worried about the impact on your mental health. I felt my face flush with anger and humiliation. Marcus had never seen me work. He had no basis for assessing my professional capabilities. The only stress he'd witnessed was the anxiety I felt whenever he undermined my confidence. "Maria, I need you to know that everything my brother told you is false," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He has no knowledge of my work performance or my ability to handle professional responsibilities. My brother has a pattern of sabotaging my career opportunities, and I have documentation of this behavior going back several years." Maria was quiet for a moment. "That's very concerning. Can you provide that documentation? We need to review this situation carefully before making any decisions about the promotion." I spent the next week compiling evidence. Screenshots of text messages where Marcus dismissed my achievements. Email threads where he'd suggested I was getting ahead of myself, professionally. Documentation of conversations where he'd warned me against applying for promotions or taking on leadership roles. But the most damaging evidence came when I started investigating whether Marcus had contacted anyone else at my company. I reached out to colleagues in different departments, asking if anyone had received inquiries about me from someone claiming to be my brother. The results were devastating. Marcus had called the accounting department, expressing concerns about whether I could handle budget management responsibilities. He'd contacted our IT department, suggesting I might not be technically savvy enough for a strategic role. He'd even called our largest client, Henderson Tech, introducing himself as my brother and asking if they'd had any concerns about working with me. Jennifer was horrified when I showed her the documentation. "Rachel, this is systematic sabotage of your career. This goes beyond normal family dynamics. This is deliberate interference with your professional reputation and opportunities." Together, we prepared a comprehensive response for HR and the executive team. Jennifer provided additional documentation of my performance, including client feedback, project outcomes, and peer evaluations. She detailed specific examples of my leadership skills, my ability to handle pressure, and my professional demeanor in challenging situations. The response from our CEO, David Morrison, came faster than I expected. He called me into his office on a Friday afternoon in November, along with Jennifer and Maria from HR. "Rachel, I've reviewed all the documentation you provided and I've spoken with Jennifer extensively about your performance," Mr. Morrison began. "I need to start by apologizing. We should have come to you directly when we received concerning information about your capabilities, rather than investigating behind the scenes. That was a failure on our part." I held my breath, waiting for the rejection I was sure was coming. However, after reviewing everything, your performance record, your client relationships, Jennifer's detailed assessments, and this unfortunate family situation, I've reached a decision about the director position. My heart was pounding as I waited for his next words. "I'm promoting you to Director of Strategic Planning, effective immediately, with a 25% salary increase and expanded authority over client strategy development. Additionally, I'm creating a new position for you, Department Head of Client Relations, which will give you oversight of both strategic planning and account management." I was so shocked I could barely respond. "Furthermore," Mr. Morrison continued, "I want you to know that what your brother did was completely inappropriate and potentially illegal. No one outside this company should be contacting our departments making inquiries about employees. We're implementing new protocols to prevent this kind of interference, and we're considering whether to pursue legal action against your brother for corporate harassment." After the meeting, I sat in my new office, an actual office with a door and windows, trying to process what had just happened. I'd gone from thinking my promotion was dead to receiving an even better position than I'd originally applied for. But the story didn't end there. Mr. Morrison had been serious about investigating Marcus's interference. Our legal department reached out to Marcus's employer, Pinnacle Consulting, to inform them that one of their employees had been making unauthorized contact with our company, potentially interfering with our internal personnel decisions. The response from Pinnacle was swift and decisive. Marcus's supervisor, James Wright, called Mr. Morrison directly to apologize and get more details about the situation. "We take this extremely seriously," Mr. Wright told Mr. Morrison. "Our employees are strictly prohibited from interfering with other companies' internal processes, especially personnel decisions. This violates our professional ethics guidelines and our client confidentiality standards. Within a week, Marcus was fired from Pinnacle Consulting. The official reason was violation of professional ethics standards and unauthorized contact with partner organizations. But the real impact went beyond just losing his job. Word spread quickly through the consulting industry about why Marcus had been terminated, making it extremely difficult for him to find new employment. The consequences for Marcus extended beyond his professional life. Our parents, who had always positioned him as the successful, responsible older brother, were forced to confront the reality of what he'd done. When they learned that he'd been systematically sabotaging my career for years, they were shocked and disappointed. "We never knew he was doing this," my mother said during a difficult family conversation. "We thought he was just being protective, looking out for you. We had no idea he was actively interfering with your work." My father was even more direct. "What Marcus did was wrong. It was dishonest and it could have seriously damaged your career. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior." The family dynamics shifted dramatically. Marcus, who had always been the golden child, was now the one facing scrutiny and disappointment from our parents. Meanwhile, I was finally receiving recognition for my professional achievements without his constant undermining. At Morrison & Associates, my promotion was met with enthusiasm from colleagues who had watched my work for years. The Henderson Tech account that I'd managed so successfully became a case study for client relationship management. My strategic planning initiatives were being implemented across multiple departments. 6 months into my new role, I was invited to speak at the Regional Marketing Association conference about innovative client relationship strategies. My presentation was well received, and several companies approached me about consulting opportunities. For the first time in my career, I was being recognized as an expert in my field rather than questioned about my capabilities. The most validating moment came during my annual performance review with Mr. Morrison. "Rachel, your promotion has been one of the best personnel decisions I've made in my 20 years running this company. Our client retention is up 40%, our strategic planning process is more efficient, and other departments are asking to model their management structure after yours." He paused, then continued, "I also want you to know that we've had inquiries from other companies trying to recruit you. Your reputation in the industry has grown significantly this year. While I hope you'll stay with us, I want you to know that your career options are wide open." The transformation in my professional confidence was remarkable. Without Marcus's constant undermining, I was able to trust my own judgment and take appropriate risks. I implemented new client service protocols that increased satisfaction scores. I developed strategic partnerships that brought in 3 major new accounts. I mentored junior staff members and helped several of them earn promotions. Marcus, meanwhile, was struggling to rebuild his career. The consulting industry is relatively small, and word about his termination had spread. Several firms had rejected his applications once they learned about the circumstances of his departure from Pinnacle. He eventually found a position at a much smaller firm, with significantly reduced responsibilities and compensation. The family gatherings became less frequent and more awkward. Marcus's fall from grace was difficult for everyone to navigate, especially our parents, who had invested so much in the narrative of his success. I tried to be gracious about the situation, but I also maintained clear boundaries about discussing my career with him. A year after my promotion, I received an unexpected call from James Wright at Pinnacle Consulting. They were looking for a new director of client strategy, and my reputation in the industry had caught their attention. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company that had fired Marcus for sabotaging my career was now trying to recruit me. "We've been following your work at Morrison & Associates," Mr. Wright explained. "Your innovative approach to client relationships and strategic planning is exactly what we're looking for. We'd like to discuss a significant opportunity with substantial growth potential." I was flattered but ultimately decided to stay at Morrison & Associates, where I had strong relationships and continued opportunities for advancement. Mr. Morrison had already begun discussing the possibility of making me a junior partner within the next 2 years. The most rewarding aspect of my career growth was the mentoring opportunities that came with my new position. I made it a priority to support other employees who seemed to be struggling with confidence or family pressure. I could recognize the signs of external undermining because I'd experienced it myself. One junior account manager, Lisa, reminded me of myself 2 years earlier, talented and hardworking but constantly second-guessing her abilities. During our one-on-one meetings, I learned that her father had been discouraging her from pursuing management roles, suggesting she wasn't leadership material. "Lisa, I want you to focus on the objective measures of your performance," I told her. "Your client feedback scores are consistently high, your project management skills are excellent, and your strategic thinking is sophisticated. Those are facts, not opinions. Trust the data about your capabilities rather than external voices that might not have your best interests at heart." With encouragement and mentoring, Lisa applied for and received a promotion to senior account manager within 6 months. Watching her confidence grow reminded me how much damage family sabotage could do, and how powerful professional validation could be in counteracting it. 2 years after my promotion, I was indeed offered a junior partnership at Morrison & Associates. The ceremony was attended by colleagues, clients, and industry partners who had worked with me over the years. The validation from the professional community was overwhelming in the best possible way. My parents attended the partnership celebration, finally seeing objective evidence of my professional success. My mother later admitted that she'd never fully understood my work before, but seeing the respect I commanded from colleagues and clients helped her appreciate my capabilities. "I realize now that we may have held you back by always asking Marcus to advise you," she said. "We thought we were being helpful, but we didn't understand how successful you were on your own." Marcus was not invited to the celebration. Our relationship had never recovered from his sabotage, and I'd accepted that it probably never would. The damage to trust was too significant, and his actions had been too deliberate to chalk up to misguided concern. As I settled into my role as junior partner, I reflected on how dramatically my career trajectory had changed once the sabotage stopped. Without Marcus's constant undermining, I'd been able to take appropriate risks, trust my judgment, and build on my successes rather than constantly questioning my capabilities. The promotion that Marcus had tried to prevent became the foundation for everything that followed. The confidence I gained from Mr. Morrison's validation created a positive cycle. Success led to more opportunities, which led to more success, which led to industry recognition and partnership. Most importantly, I'd learned to distinguish between genuine concern and disguised sabotage. Marcus's worry about my stress levels had really been about maintaining his position as the successful sibling. His protection from office politics had really been about preventing me from developing professional relationships and skills. The workplace investigation that followed Marcus's interference also led to important policy changes at Morrison & Associates. We now have clear protocols for handling outside inquiries about employees, and we provide training to managers about recognizing signs of family or personal sabotage that might affect employee performance. "Your situation taught us something important about supporting our employees holistically," Mr. Morrison told me during a recent meeting. "We can't just focus on work performance. We need to be aware of external factors that might be undermining our people's confidence and career development." 3 years after that first sabotaged promotion, I'm thriving in ways I never imagined possible. My client portfolio includes some of the region's largest companies. My strategic planning methodologies are being adopted by other firms. I'm frequently invited to speak at industry conferences and serve on professional development committees. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome is that Marcus's sabotage ultimately led to greater success than I would have achieved without his interference. Mr. Morrison's response to the situation, promoting me beyond my original application and creating new opportunities, demonstrated the kind of leadership and support that has characterized my entire experience at Morrison & Associates. The junior partnership that seemed impossible when Marcus was constantly undermining my confidence now feels like just the beginning. Mr. Morrison has already discussed the timeline for full partnership, and I'm developing strategic initiatives that could position me for executive leadership within the next 5 years. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals create opportunities for the most meaningful victories. Marcus's attempt to sabotage my promotion didn't just fail. It led to career advancement beyond anything I'd originally imagined, supported by leaders who believe in my capabilities and a professional community that values my contributions. The girl who once questioned her own judgment because of her brother's constant criticism has become a business leader whose strategies are being implemented across the industry. And it all started with one promotion that my brother tried to prevent, but that ultimately became the foundation for everything that followed.